Hey guys, Montel here, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Be Blunt with Montel, where we cut through all the noise and bring you the real insights into cannabis, culture, law, and the industry. Today, we're zeroing in on the complex world of cannabis regulations in New York, a topic that's as dynamic as it is influential in the national discourse surrounding cannabis. And who better to guide us through this labyrinth than an esteemed entrepreneur and staunch advocate within the cannabis and hemp industries? Not only has he charted an impactful course through these tumultuous waters with his ventures, Veterans Holdings, and Veterans Hemp Market, but his service in the military and dedication to veteran support highlight a commitment to a community and a country that informs us in his work. Jason Ambrosino, welcome so much to Let's Be Blunt with Montel.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And just let me start by saying thank you for your service. I always think it means double as much coming from another service member. So thank you.
Of course, sir. And thank you for your service. I really appreciate it. Thank you for what you've done. And thank you for your continued service, because what you're doing right now is just as impactful as putting the uniform on and being deployed. Let's go back for a little bit. Let's back up a little bit and tell me a little bit about where you grew up and why you even decided to join the military.
Sure. So I grew up in upstate New York, a little town called Mayfield, New York, in the Southern Adirondacks, and just a small community. And I would say I had pretty strong family values growing up, as most small communities in upstate New York you would expect. So, and I was driven and drawn to going to college in Norwich University, which happened to be a military college, and the first year I was there, they make you join an ROTC program, and it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it, right? So that's one of the things about going to Norwich is you have to join this ROTC program. And at the time, this was pre-war, pre 9/11. I said, this is tremendous opportunity. It's going to be a great adventure, and I signed that contract that first year. Everything changed after 9/11, and I knew that my future was going to be much different than I had imagined it to be. So, that's kind of what drove me into the military. But what kept me in the military was, the family. Obviously, I think that's what most everybody says. It's truly an amazing experience. To be that close to other human beings that aren't, related to you by blood, and in going through, combat and in multiple years of command, I wanted to be in the military for my entire life. That's what I was going to do. I was going to retire. And unfortunately, when I was in combat, I got injured and I got blown out, messed my neck up a little bit. And I was able to hang out for a few years. I ended up finishing up my career as procurement and logistics and have a tremendous amount of education and success because of that movement in my career. But at 10 years in, the Army was downsizing, and they decided it was time for me to go. And that's when I had to, medically retire. So I retired at 10 years. And it was devastating to me because it was a complete change in my life. I didn't know which direction I was going. I knew that all the medications that I was on, probably 7 or 8 different medications, I knew that all those medications were really kind of making me less than. And that was one of the reasons I wasn't keeping up anymore. Really, honestly, it was time for me to medically retire with all of the, the medications that they had me on.
Well, and I was before you jump. Yeah. You kind of jumped past your military.
Yeah, so I did.
Let's go. Let's honor it. Let's talk a little bit about what you did. Tell me about your service in the Army.
Sure. I was in the cavalry. So my first unit was in 4th Infantry Division, 110 Cav out of Fort Hood. And I was the young platoon leader there and trained up a unit for war. And once we got into combat, so I was Operation Iraqi Freedom, 05-07. Southeast Baghdad, which was not a great place to be at that time. And that's where we operated. So I trained up the platoon, and while I was there, I became an XO, so the executive officer, second in command of a cavalry troop. And that's where I finished up for that year of combat. And then, we got back, and I went to Captain's Career Course and 101st Airborne Division. And served with 132 Cav in the 101st, where I did another company command. I didn't go with them with Afghanistan. I stayed back here at that time. And then from there, that's when I kind of realized I was going to have to make a change. So, we changed functional areas in the military, you start operations, and then you change over to something new. And procurement and logistics seemed like it was something that was going to work out well for me. But yeah, I mean, a war is a horrible thing, and I hope people never have to experience it. And you don't really realize how much it affects you until each year that goes by. So when you get away from the military, it exponentially increases, how you feel about things, I think.
Sure. And you were injured while on active duty. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
I was. So, we everybody seemed like they were getting blown up, right? That was kind of a given that by the time your deployment was over, you were going to have been in at least one explosion. And we were in Arab Jabor, southeast Baghdad, and we didn't have much support. Air support had gotten canceled because of red air alert, so enemy air, anti-air. So we were kind of out there on our own, and we ended up in a patrol base, and it was really difficult to get into these areas. You had to take all these canal roads to get there without traveling on the main road to get blown up, and we kind of got stuck there. And enemy fire started coming in. We were more or less being ambushed at the time. So you had machine gun fire coming in, you had artillery coming in, more mortars. And we knew that we had to get out of the area. So we waited until about 2:00 in the morning, that 0200, and we let off a gigantic explosion of all the different IEDs and unexploded ordnance that we had found during the operation. And we used that as a diversion that let us, get out of there and get onto the main road. The problem was the main road ran along the river, and the main road had 500-pound bombs buried in it. So we had no idea if one of these was going to get set off. So that was an interesting ride. So once we got through that ride and we get off the road, we're going through this area where tanks are overwatching it. You'd think you'd be safe, but that's exactly where they were out. We hit an IED, and it blew the front of our vehicle off. Everybody survived. Everybody got some bumps and bruises. Some of us had, unfortunately, injuries we didn't really realize were as severe as they were until, a year later or so, when you start having degradation in, cervical area and stuff like that. But yeah, that was quite a night. I still remember it pretty well.
Well, I bet you do. And so because of that degradation, the compounding over time, you ended up having to medically discharge?
I am, yeah. I'm 100% service disabled.
So Jason, can you tell me a little bit about your transition out of the military? I mean, you were disabled, but talk about that transition, how difficult that can be.
Sure. It's tremendously difficult when you're having to leave both your job and your family. And I think sometimes it's not appreciated how tremendously complicated that is for somebody to, fully understand or rectify within the 6 months that they give you, that you realize that it's time for your entire life to change. Quite frankly, when you leave the military, you think everybody stays in touch, but they don't. It's kind of like the military people stay talking to the military, and you got to go find your veteran friends, which is fine. But that wasn't the issue. The issue was that I was on a tremendous amount of medication. I think seven different medications that was prescribed to me by the Army and then the VA. And, I went to work for my family's company because it seemed like the best thing for me to do at the time. And, it got to a point where I kind of felt like I wasn't being as productive for them as I really should be. And, I was being hired and put on because I was their son rather than, that I was an effective employee doing a good job, and I wasn't going to put my family in that position. So I knew I had to make some changes, and I started reading some books and realizing that there was some other options out there. Started reading a lot about psychedelic therapy, and also how much cannabis had helped quite a few people. And that's when I decided that it was time to try something different. So I experimented with a few different things.
And, one of the things that you had said earlier before we started talking was that you did suffer from and still do suffer from some symptoms of PTSD and some of the therapy. And I do know a lot about PTSD now. I've been working on a protocol for several years, one that's now been acknowledged by the governing body for psychological protocols in the world as one of the most efficacious treatments for PTSD that exists today. We know that 9 out of every 10 people who go through this protocol literally remit 100% of their symptoms in 5 to 10 hours. I'll tell you what it is. The protocol is called RTM, reconsolidation of traumatic memories. I will try to hook you, if you want me to, I can hook you up with the people who actually administer it. It's been having incredible success. And we are right now literally talking to everybody from, the head of the Department of the Defense Health Agency to the Secretary of the Navy himself, who's involved, to several organizations. Matter of fact, the protocol is being deployed right now in the Ukraine because it is so successful at helping soldiers and any form of PTSD, whether it be civilian or combat or childhood trauma. It works for all of that, and the success rate has been incredible. So I can hook you up with that if you want, after we finish this conversation. But I'll get you in touch with the people who could probably get you a treatment if you want it. Okay.
It's absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to learn more about that.
Absolutely. But I know you said you did some research, started studying, and started learning a little bit about the cannabis industry. And
yeah, I mean, it was more than just the cannabis industry at the time. I mean, so it was my neck pain and pain throughout my whole body that I really needed better solutions for, and really turning to kind of cannabis did that for me. And after a couple of years of figuring out how I was going to get involved in this, it's still 2015 or 16 where I'm starting to experiment with how to build different compositions of the cannabinoid structures. And then when the Farm Bill opened up, it really gave me the opportunity to get on the hemp side of things. And that's kind of where we really kind of made the full transition to the cannabis industry.
Absolutely. And you started multiple companies. Tell me a little bit about them.
Sure. The first company that I started was still, doing business is American Veteran Enterprise Team. And that's a procurement and logistics company. We do a lot of government bid work and things like that. We're also getting into, providing packaging, equipment, things like that to support the cannabis industry. As more and more banks support it and allow us to kind of have the credit lines we need to do that business.
Anyway, you were doing this out of the state of New York, right? So how did the landscape
Correct.
of New York help you make the decision to enter the space?
I'm sorry, can you?
I was saying, when you started seeing things opening up in New York, and when New York didn't pass its legalization until when, last year?
Right. So, the way in New York was the hemp industry. And, Farm Bill came along and they had handpicked, a handful of folks on the processing side of things, New York State being that they were going to kind of, start off in 2016. So these guys had a tremendous head start. And then 2018 came along, Farm Bill happens, hemp is legalized. New York State kind of got this shadowy thing going on in order to, become a processor or a grower. We kind of found a way around that, and we got into the hemp industry. And as New York State loosened their reins on access to being able to participate, we increased our involvement. So we built a local community store called Veterans Hemp Market, where we were able to really focus on the non-psychoactive cannabinoids and really, quite frankly, target a lot of veterans as well as senior citizens. It really became a staple in the community. And, we had that solid foundation of understanding of how cannabinoids work. And then New York State kind of pushed us along the way when they had their conditional license program, which essentially gave us all the ability to turn our hemp business into a marijuana business as well.
Gotcha. And I mean, talk a little bit more about the regulations and how, there were some major hurdles you had to face while navigating your cannabis regulations, right?
Yeah, I think that we're still navigating those hurdles.
Yeah, because New York has really got a lot of crazy things that are happening right now. There's been a lot of lawsuits and a lot of other stuff going on, right?
It's a story that again goes all the way back to when Andrew Cuomo originally, the legalization happened in New York State, and then for political reasons that got sat on. And, we could go through an entire timeline of how much time they notified farmers to start their crops to, we're talking months, right? 3 or 4 months. So everything right off the bat was being grown on, this idea that there was going to be this market. And the regulations never seemed to catch up enough with the reality of what was going on, because right behind them was coming all sorts of lawsuits. And unfortunately, when you build a law or regulations on law that is kind of shaky grounds, it opens it up to all these lawsuits, and those lawsuits really slowed the entire regulation or the entire industry down. So here we are. We're still, we're a year in basically from the first time we sold any product. And I don't think New York State's crossed $100 million in sales, or just crossed $100 million in sales, where it's got, neighbors that are, nearing hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion in sales. And we should be the largest market in the country. So I would say the regulations and overall is slowing the whole industry down. Navigating those, really required taking I guess, a step forward without always seeking permission from OCM, because when you look for the Office of Cannabis Management's guidance, it would take quite a long time to get. The regulatory hurdles are never ending.
I mean, there are quite a few misconceptions about New York State and what's going on. Can you want to share a few of what most people understand or be the most common misconceptions?
Sure. I think a lot of people they have this idea that the farmers aren't doing a great job here, or they've got a poor crop quality. But if you look at the situation that these guys were given to operate in, it's tremendously amazing that we even have a crop at all. Like I said, they were only given a few months to grow. They were given the restrictions of only being able to grow outdoors. And for a year and a half now, we've operated over an only outdoor crop. We hope that those things are changing, and those indoor is going to be coming along in New York. Additionally, there's a new Tier 3 license program, which allows anybody who wants to have a brand in New York State to get this Tier 3 license and then go out and shop the different processors who you want to make your brand. And that license type is going to really bring a lot of brands in who want to, try their hand at this. We're also rapidly adding more and more dispensaries every day. So, they're up to 75 dispensaries now. I think within a year, they'll probably have several hundred. And within a few years, we should have close to 1,500, if not more. And if you look at that number and you look at how much money is spent in New York State, you're talking about a $6 billion market over the next 5 to 7 years, which is profound, especially for New York. It really, we have to stop looking at everything so zoomed in, and we have to take a moment to zoom back out and look at how much has been accomplished, since this industry really first started operating, which was not even 14 months ago. I think that the operators have made tremendous strides.
And there still is a burgeoning, a huge black and gray market going on in New York State, correct?
Yeah, New York State's black market is an interesting phenomenon. It's one of the most, probably most technically savvy black markets that existed in the world, because of how long people operate. You be in New York City and you make a phone call and your delivery driver's there in no time, right? They've already been doing this for so long, and OCM was even on record of saying, we're never going to be able to shut the New York State black market down. The only thing we're going to be able to do is allow the stores that are popping up to operate freely until the point where they've got a number of customers, and we've dwindled down that original black market. We've basically put them out of business, because all their business is now going to these illegal stores, and illegal stores are easier to shut down than the black market. So now we're
but then you also have the problem that the legal stores have such an onerous tax burden, and because of the fact that 23 you can't write off any of your expenses. You're stuck between a rock and a hard place, whereas the illegal market don't have to do any testing. They don't have to do a lot of stuff that you have to do. So it's going to be tough to shut those guys down and try to see if you can get people to transition over, right?
Well, I don't think that a lot of those guys are interested in transitioning over. I think a lot of it is money laundering. I think that the government knows a lot of that's money laundering. But New York State isn't necessarily helping with their potency taxes. I mean, we look at something like a tincture. We've got a 1,000 milligram tincture that we sell wholesale for $50, and 30 of that $50 is New York State potency taxes. Now, how do you expect the market to survive when you're getting more taxes than I'm getting totally? I don't see how that ever works.
Right. It's really kind of crazy. Well, talk to me a little bit about how your military experience has helped you, at least, or prepared you for some of the challenges of being an entrepreneur in the cannabis space.
Sure. I mean, the military kinds of prepares you for anything you want to do, right? Because it teaches you to kind of put your head down and be mission focused and get things done. But, for me, what the military has done is given me vision and compassion and drive and mission, particularly with regards to the cannabis, because I know this is something that's going to help other veterans. And I said it the day that it started helping me. I said, well, we sell cannabis, but the entire purpose of what we're doing is to bring cannabis to everybody, veterans included, at a price that they can afford, a price that they can actually access it, because it's all about access. And we're trying to push people through a legal market, and they have very little access to it because of price prohibitions. So we're trying to be as compassionate as we can at getting products to people at an access. And
Gotcha.
Yeah, thank you.
No. I mean, well, let's talk a little bit. How is your company trying to address the gap between veterans having access to real good cannabis therapy? Because again, you just nailed it. The fact that they throw such a heavy tax on you guys, no matter what, the products are going to be much more expensive than you can get them again on that black and gray market.
I think the idea, at least in New York State, is always that the medical program has got a different tax structure completely, and the hope would be that eventually your medical program, the taxes are removed entirely. This is kind of ridiculous that we tax pharmaceuticals at all, but we do. But the problem is a lot of the military folks are getting their access from the VA. That's where they're getting their healthcare access. Are we ever going to be in a position where we can have the VA actually prescribing some sort of cannabis bud? Probably not, but maybe we can be put in the position where we can provide veterans information and knowledge, and we can point them in the direction to organizations that can provide them with access to cannabis, in many cases for free. And there's a lot of those organizations out there, but right now, veterans or VA doctors are prohibited from even recommending it or suggesting it to veterans. And that is the number one thing that really needs to change in order for veterans to get access. They need to be pushed in that particular direction by the people they trust, which in many cases is their doctors at the VA.
And we have seen some movement in, at least from the DoD perspective. I think last week and a half ago, the Secretary of the Navy, I believe, stepped out, and because of all the issues that they're having right now when it comes to recruitment, they are going to change their stand on it. It was either Air Force or the Navy. They're going to change their stance on new recruits as they come in. If they test positive when they go into boot camp, they aren't automatically thrown out. They're given time to clean up, because the issue of cannabis is no longer a moral issue for the military. It's just an issue of something that they don't want people doing while they're in service. So, and when you have 38 states and the District of Columbia allowing for some form of cannabis use, it becomes difficult for you to say that we want to only, limit our pool of new recruits to just the 18 states that don't have cannabis. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I don't know how you rectify that until you get, full federal descheduling.
And you're talking about full descheduling rather than rescheduling, because this whole idea of rescheduling to a point that, say we reschedule Schedule 3, I don't think that does this industry any good whatsoever.
Right.
You actually are really opening up a can of whoop ass that we don't want to open up, because if it's rescheduled to Schedule 3, that means it becomes under the purview of the FDA, which would be under a purview of a group of people who have always denied the viability of cannabis. And so now all of a sudden I got to trust you? Come on, give me a break.
It seems to me like the reality is that there needs to essentially end up being two branches, right? And I feel like in the HHS memo, they tried to address this, and it got looked over. Maybe I interpreted it incorrectly, but it looked to me like really their suggestions are looking at taking the hemp side of things and pushing that as recreational, and then taking the marijuana side of things and pushing that into your Schedule 3 prescription type thing that's, that you're mentioning right now. And there has to be a place for new drugs to be developed from hemp and from marijuana that might not be, done by a recreational industry or by a simple medical industry of trying to access the plant. But we need to have that research done to where we're looking at like new age antibiotics, which we know that the cannabis plant in general holds, whether it's hemp, maybe to some degrees THC, as we're predominantly talking about THC studies if we're not talking about hemp. But I do think there needs to be two different channels there for what you mentioned as well. The fact that if this gets pushed into the prescription side of things, the FDA side of things, it creates a very messy situation with FDA regulations trying to regulate state rights, and it's a bigger fight.
But also, I mean, why would I? For the last 40 years, the FDA has fought cannabis. Why would I give them control over something that they don't like? It's just ridiculously an oxymoron to me. I don't understand. And when tomorrow we're not going to automatically have a whole bunch of doctors at the FDA jump up and say, "Oh, we believe in cannabis all along. We just were never able to prescribe it." No, shut them. You know what up? I think that's.
Is there any trust in the FDA at all anymore, though? I mean, they created an opiate epidemic across this whole country. So why would anybody trust anything the FDA had to say?
Correct. And so why would I want to get a product from people who don't believe in it to begin with? So, I think we're going to end up being in a situation with, when it comes to cannabis, that should be no different than anything else that we look at when it comes to the nutraceutical industry. I mean, we're allowed to use melatonin. I don't need a prescription for that.
And that's a hormone.
We're allowed to use all this other stuff that's out there, Advil, all these other drugs that are drugs, and we don't need prescriptions for them. So why are we now demanding that we prescribe another plant-based medicine where it should not come under that purview? I don't know.
What it's been explained to me is that it's not regulatorily possible for them to take it from Schedule 1 to descheduled, and that it has to take a pit stop at Schedule 3 before they can move it off completely. We'd have to follow up and see if that's true, but that's what I've been told.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily sure that is true. I mean, by the stroke of the pen from the president could literally push the DEA back under control. I mean, that's where the problem is coming in, I believe. I believe the problem is because the DEA doesn't want to give up control. And this should have never been.
Would you want to give up control if 70% of your salary was paid by civil asset forfeitures?
Hell no. And would I want to give up control if I knew that I was getting kickbacks from private prisons around the country and organizations like that to make sure that I keep filling the ranks with brown and black people? Hell no. So I think that, we're going to be in this battle for a long time, a lot longer than a lot of people actually believe. And saying that, I mean, how do you think your companies can survive in a landscape where it's going to be 5 to 10 years before we even have some sort of legislation that actually is more affirmative to the industry? I mean, how do you think you're going to be able to survive for long periods of time when we're in this catch-22?
Honestly, I think it's because rather than us being focused on what our company is going to succeed or fail to do, we're more focused on whether we're able to regrow this community that we're in. The Gloversville, New York is the area I grew up in, and the industry was just devastated in the 60s, and it just got worse and worse over the years. So the whole reason for us coming back to this city and buying a big building and then putting we're up to 30 employees here, and rebuilding something within the community where there was actually industry and places for people to work. My success is based on whether we succeed in bringing any light back to this community. And I think that with that mission, the rest comes along with it. So no matter what is thrown at us regulatorily, we're going to succeed because we're going to, move and flow with the punches, and we're going to stay focused on the community side of the mission rather than just simply what our bottom line is at the time. Of course, the bottom line is important to the other, but I think one comes with the other.
Sure. Tell us a little bit about the brands that you have in New York, like your New York Honey and your Space.
Sure, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
We have our New York Honey, which is your standard vape. I shouldn't say standard. We spend a lot of time getting the perfect mix of cannabinoids together. So you'll notice that our percentages are usually a few percent less than everybody else in total THC, but you'll notice we're higher in a little bit of CBG, a little bit of CBD, nice little blend that really provides for the effect. It's become a very popular product in New York State. We have it in multiple form factors. You can find it in 55 of 75 of the dispensaries. We also have Space Buds Moon Rocks, It's one of the few. It's actually the only moon rock product on the market right now. It's been very, very popular. Milligram price per milligram. It's the best deal going in the state. And folks like to take this. It's about 4 grams in here, and they get it for $60, and they break it up and they'll mix it with their their blunts or their joints, what have you. We have our edibles that are we're zoom in there. Our Liberty Squares, which is a vegan. It's a vegan. Gummy that's it's made with real fruit juices. And then the products that are most important to me are like these, and we try to keep the price super low on these. This is a full extract cannabis oil, basically like your RSO. We've had some people, we've been providing this to customers longer than New York State has had a legal market, and it's helped a lot of people. This is the high potency stuff that you'll see a lot of people take for serious illness, and we've seen people have success for it. So we're happy to be able to continue to offer that. Oddly enough, the recreational, half the price is medical. So until we actually get medical prices down to, again, something people can access, we're not going to see the people using cannabis the way they really need to in order to see the benefits that we'd like them to see. So that's yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you've made giving back like a central theme to your business. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I don't know who taught me this, but somebody along the line taught me that if your mission, was focused on your own success, or focused on money, again, that would be your own success, and it's bound to fail. And if your mission is focused on somebody else's success or enhancing somebody's life, then you can't fail, because the entire time you're trying to achieve that, you've won. You can't lose when you're trying to do something for somebody else. And that's what we try to keep close to our heart.
Absolutely. And are you working on any legislation right now or any community outreach programs? Talk about that.
We have been working with a local community college to bring in interns, and that's worked out pretty well. We've been able to provide a lot of knowledge to the local community that otherwise they want to have. We're working on a veteran program as well to bring in some more veterans. Right now, we've mainly been focused on bringing people in and providing training, providing educational outreach. We've done several lecture series that have been free of charge with the local community college. We're hoping to do more and more as well. We're looking to start a housing program with a local veteran outreach group that specifically targets a couple of veterans in mind that I know have lost some limbs from back in the war that we're trying to help out. But I can't mention too much about that yet because everything's not settled, but that's something big we're working on.
Absolutely. And what message would you have for first off, give out the stats and the information about how people can reach out to you?
Sure. You can find us on a number of different social sites: Facebook, Veterans Choice Creations; Instagram at Veterans Choice Creations; VeteransChoiceCreations.com; also New York Honey 420, NYHoney420.com, NewYorkHoneyVapes.com. You can also find us on Reddit, VCC420, and NYHoney420, or NYHoney, I think it is.
Super. And what message would you want to send out to the veterans right now? I mean, who maybe watching this program, to let them know that there's an opportunity, or would you recommend veterans to try to reach out? Do you hire veterans specifically? What?
Absolutely. If you're a veteran, if you're getting out of the military, or if you're a disabled veteran and you haven't been able to find a steady job, and you're in this area or you're willing to move to this area, Gloversville, New York is a very cheap place to live. You can still buy a house for $100,000. If you could, it's one of the reasons we decided to build here. If you come this area and you walk in here, we're going to find a job that'll work for you. We have this is a very hands-on industry. It's one of the reasons I like this, was the idea of my veteran buddies who were really 100% disabled, having a hard time keeping a full-time job. Come in, work for a few hours when you can do it on the jobs that you can do. and it helps everybody. It gives you a purpose. Gives you, in at the same time, everybody that works here goes home with a full bag of tricks every night too. I'm pretty sure.
Sure. Well, how about what do you think the future for cannabis and veterans are like in the state of New York? What do you envision over the next couple of years?
New York has got actually a lot of processors that are service disabled veterans. We talk to each other. We're working on projects together, and I think what you're going to see is a lot more outreach. I think you're going to see a lot more focus on getting disabled veterans involved in the New York State market, especially after the service disabled veteran lawsuit. I think it's a great opportunity for everybody, but especially veterans. New York State's very, very good with veterans. There's a lot of great programs here. There's tax relief programs for both your property taxes and your school taxes. This is a great place to come and build something where maybe some things haven't worked out other places.
Wow. Well, I tell you, guys, it's really just enlightening and absolutely profound what you're trying to do in the state of New York. And I know your work with veterans and cannabis is making a genuine difference. Look, I'm almost out of time. But before I go, any final words you'd like to throw out there?
Don't give up. Don't give up. If you're a disabled veteran, you're listening to this, and you're feeling like giving up, just sleep on it a couple of nights and smoke a joint. I guess it helps me. Smoke a joint and think about it again.
Absolutely. Well, look, my friend, thank you so much for being a part of our show today. Thank you for what you're doing for veterans. Thank you so much for what you're doing for the community and really putting people in the right, send in the right direction. One more time, send out your stats. If people want to get a hold of you, where do they go?
VeteransChoiceCreations.com.
Okay.
New York Honey. Yep, sorry.
No, go ahead.
The other site for the New York Honeys is nyhoney420.com.
Super. Well, folks, that's all the time we have for today. I got to thank you so again, Jason, for being a part of the show today. I want to remind all our listeners that the show is about bringing you the unfiltered stories from behind the smoke. So until next time, I want you all to stay inspired, stay informed, and above all, stay blunt. Jason, again, thank you so much for being a part of the show today, sir. Thanks for joining me on Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Please make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to be notified when new episodes post each week. We'd love to hear your feedback also, so please send us your comments.